Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name's Adam Kinneborough, VP of Customer Success at Squared Up. I'm joined by our great friend, Christian Heitkamp from NICE. Hi, Christian.
Hi, Adam. This is Christian. Thanks for the introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries at all. So we're here today to talk about digital experience monitoring, whatever that is. Christian's going to fill us in, specifically around NICE's solution for monitoring Office 365, Microsoft 365 rather. We'll also cover some nice juicy dashboards built in Squared Up as well. So, Christian, can you kick us off by, well, let's tell the audience what digital experience monitoring is.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So thanks all for joining. And yeah, I thought I'd start a bit with like a broader reach and talk a bit about what is this thing actually, digital experience monitoring. So where did it come up and where did it come from actually? So and it started about 2 years back when the analyst Gardner came around with a market guide for the next trends that would evolve around monitoring, and they see more and more the users in the focus of being part or having importance for monitoring, because infrastructure is more like a commodity. We run everything or many things as a service, and as we run things as a service, operations are left a bit out of our scope, so to say. But still, if users, the end users, especially the VIPs and the important users in our enterprises, hit a problem or can't submit their travel report, can't send an email, you name it, then they for sure call your department. Worst thing, your boss is going to call you and say, what's going on, what's happening actually here. So that's where this term digital experience monitoring evolved. It's not only about things work or not, but really like how do services perform. And especially in the scope of the service like Microsoft 365, this has experienced a big push, especially during the last months during COVID-19, where everybody, or most of us, are working from home, so to say. And also there, we should have the best experience possible. And how do we monitor that actually? And what options do we have? So I'll reach a bit out and take it a bit away from the typical vendor slot we have here. So like to give it a broader reach. So I use the DEM for digital experience monitoring here, and I'll quickly will introduce you the different approaches that there are for monitoring. So the end user experience, if you like. So first, obviously, most of us are watching this webinar today from your laptop or your desktop station. Some of you might be on a mobile device as well. And in the end, you have a device where you watch this webinar. It's being like run via GoToMeeting today, but we could use Teams or anything else, right? But how do we measure actually that you have a good experience? So there's, on the right-hand side, we have something called real transactions. So we can really do transactions or measurement from your device to the service. So, and in this case, we would need to have an agent or do some injections on a code level, APM injections, or instrument the code on the device you use. And this would basically give the enterprise or the NOC, the operator, like a view like over all devices that are currently used in the enterprise using mails or other business services, and they see the experience from each of the users. Obviously, for some users that might not be interested because they're on a cellular network that has low bandwidth, so they go red because they have no transmission of the data in a good performant way. So, and but on others, there might be really a problem where the account is locked for them, and then they just typically can't access their email or send some mail or cannot access the SAP portal or something like that. So there's this on this side where we have really something on the device, like an agent on a mobile device or so. This is a rare use case, but it is, and there are options for that, and I'll talk a bit about the solutions that are on this as well a bit later. So, and on the left side, we have more something we call synthetic transactions. So, and synthetic transaction is like not a real device. It's like either a virtual device or it's a hosted agent. It is in the end an agent as well, but it's located at specific probing stations, or stations, if you want to name it like that. These are basically computer systems either on your premise or in the cloud, which actually do this check for you, which are more reliable than an end user device, because the end user device typically roams around, is on various numbers of networks, while this basically is located at a central data center or at an internet breakout or a branch office. That's where you have this agent placed, if you do host your own agent. There's also the concept of hosted agents, so I call this agent as a service, if you like. So where you, like, for example, we here at NICE would run like a service in our data center that you could use to test, for example, your service from a German office location. That's why I am today here. So that would be basically as a service. So there are these two concepts. In both cases, there are synthetic transactions, so they automatically run and mimic and simulate the user like a robotic system. Then in between, we have all the network monitoring. So, and we'll talk about this in a moment as well. So the network obviously is a key component. And then we have the operations monitoring, the operational part, where we run, put the business applications here. So there could be a public service or a private service. You could also have a traditional on-premise data center or host your own cloud, basically. So that's basically the third component. So we have different components, and we basically have to wrap them all together to get a holistic picture of our real end user experience. If we just like look from an agent and there's a problem at the back end, we might not notice it, but some transactions on the back end might cause a problem. So because we cannot see everything from the front end, so we need to involve all the different components in that. So and then I'll talk now a bit in the next slide about, again, the same stack you see here. So we have this infrastructure and operations monitoring, we have network and user monitoring and APM. So, and then we have, like, ideally one dashboard, one umbrella suite that kind of wraps this all up. So, and this is kind of the key where what you want like to have, that you have one view on all the things where you bring everything together. There are many companies around that have an APM suite like Dynatrace or New Relic. There's network monitoring, there's infrastructure monitoring with tons of different products, and there are end user monitoring products as well. So what we try is like to set this all bit into a scope and try the really hard work, so to say, to bring everything together at this point in time. So in the end, the focus is here obviously on the end user monitoring, so the digital experience monitoring, but I just really want to highlight that it just not consists of the end user. It has more moving pieces and parts here. So moving here to the right side of the slide, so I added a different number of vendors in here. So, and you might be familiar with some of them. So I'll talk about the nice part where we do the end user monitor for Microsoft 365 a bit more in detail, but there are other products about Pingdom that use synthetic transactions or website monitoring, so to say. And then we have the operations stack, and all this is spanning around like Squared Up, because Squared Up is the single place where we can all incorporate this. And now, my dear friend Adam, I just want to bring you on again, and maybe you can just talk us a bit through, like, because Squared Up is not just like adding the information from System Center and the management pack like ours. It's much more. So maybe you can add some words around what you can do about the other tooling that's listed here.
Yeah, of course. It's exactly like you're describing. It's very common for our customers to choose a whole suite of those sort of best-in-class tools. So they're doing their on-prem and even Azure monitoring using SCOM. They're then looking, things like SolarWinds to monitor their network, the apps that are fundamentally being run on all this infrastructure. Yeah, like you said, wired up with Dynatrace, New Relic. And Pingdom is an increasingly popular tool for those outside-in transactions. And it's great having all that data. It's great having, exactly all the information you need in order to understand exactly where a problem lies. But the problem that we try to solve through Squared Up is we don't only give you the, absolutely awesome dashboarding for SCOM and for Azure Monitor, but we also offer a number of ways to integrate other data in context. So you install Squared Up, you get all your SCOM infrastructure, all your Azure estates right there in front of you. Lots of drill downs, lots of nice metrics and health states and alerts and all the stuff that you'd want to get out of SCOM. But then you can also use our, say, SQL tile to query your SolarWinds database, and you can start pulling in contextual information about the network stack that sits between servers. So, a couple of health issues on different servers in different data centers. You can also then layer in that nice information from SolarWinds that may be highlighting that there's a problem with the link between those data centers. And again, from Pingdom, being able to pull in information for checks that are running to get that outside-in data saves you bringing it all into SCOM, which, I mean, obviously you can do. You can build as much sort of custom monitoring and ingest things with APIs, but sometimes it is useful just to go straight to the source and bring that data in context. And yeah, so like I said, anything with a sort of a RESTful API, we can pull in anything with a SQL database. And we've just in our latest release, Squared Up 4.8, added line graphs for SQL. So you can also draw nice, pretty performance graphs or, events per day, alerts per day, that kind of thing. So you can really add some nice context to your SCOM data or your Azure Monitor data with those other tools. And then, like you said, you get that nice umbrella that covers all of your monitoring data in one place. And it gives you the ability to build pretty seamless dashboards that will help you troubleshoot an issue end to end. And you can then jump out to SolarWinds to see more detail if you need it, that kind of idea. But yeah, it's certainly that sort of that context, the single pane of glass all in one place.
Okay, wonderful. So let me just pick one more. Like, let's assume like a customer wrote like an application, a .NET application, and uses the Azure Monitor to monitor it with application insights, for example, and it brings a lot of data from the actual application. What type of integration do you have to Azure Monitor to bring that, also make this part of the Squared Up?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of options. So for our customers who use SCOM, our SCOM product actually has Azure App Insights and Azure Monitor log tiles, so you can directly query a log analytics workspace, which these days lets you get into all your App Insights data anyway. But yeah, you can also then start bringing in App Insights data. So we have quite a nice setup for our sort of sales application, where we're looking at all the infrastructure in SCOM. We're doing outside-in tests with Pingdom. We've also got the new Relic agent installed on all the servers, and it's monitoring IIS and the .NET stack on the app servers. And again, we can then start pulling in that data by API and also use App Insights to pull in that sort of similar data as well. So it gives you the code level exceptions, the sort of inside out monitoring for your application, if you like. But yeah, our Azure Monitor product as well natively integrates with Azure Monitor logs and also App Insights. So yeah, but both options, whether you're using Azure Monitor or SCOM or a combination, you can get all of that into one place with Squared Up.
Great. So thanks, Adam. So let's move a bit forward and see like again around end user monitoring and digital experience monitoring. So I want to pick a bit on this again and look for what options actually we have to do that. So and like from a technical perspective. So first, we talked already this endpoint monitoring. So brings it back basically to the point, you sitting in front of a device, and this device is basically monitored. Like this is the position where you would have like eventually thousands or 100,000 of devices in your enterprise, and each of them runs an agent and brings all the data back. So moving really like into like even like an IoT scenario where you like have data from each of the different devices. So this is really very new and it's evolving. There are not many products around that. There are very few at this point. And we actually had in the past at NICE a product. It was around the BlackBerry ecosystem where there was actually an agent and feed data back. So, but it is really a lot of data into questions like, do I need all of that? Do I need to know if each of the devices has currently sufficient battery or not? So this is still a bit of a corner case from our perspective. So real user monitoring has been around many years, and maybe Adam, you want to add something? What is actually real user monitoring in that case? So.
I mean, fundamentally, I guess it's the sort of the gateway drug for APM, right? It's a simple way to get that actual application data out. So again, it's not about necessarily looking at your application from the outside. Google Analytics is a great example of a fairly sort of simple and easy to adopt real user monitoring or RUM technology. Pingdom does it as well, and most of the other big APM tools will all do this to an extent. And it's effectively putting a little bit of tracking inside your app, so you can see, when someone lands on your page. In the Google Analytics case, it's all about where they came from, how long they're spending on each page, click paths, how they get from one page to another, and fundamentally it helps to improve your application, to improve your website, but equally it lets you identify when there maybe are problems, not necessarily with the structure of the content, but just around, our link's broken from one page to another, our page is loading particularly slowly for one reason or another. So it's about understanding what's happening to a person's session, I guess, when they get into your application. How does the application respond, and how does that affect what the user does in your application?
Perfect. Yeah, let me talk a bit about the next one. So synthetic transaction monitoring, because this is like we have been working for over 3 years now on with the Microsoft 365 solution we're developing. So it's primarily based on synthetic transaction plus a few APIs that go into the Microsoft API stack, and I'll talk about this in a moment as well. But synthetic transaction is really about simulating a user functionality, like, for example, downloading a file, logging into a mailbox, you name it, basically what you can do that. Or as well doing a mail flow check, sending an email from location A to location B and checking how long that takes. So this is this real action, a synthetic monitoring, which gives you proof that the service you're testing is actually working. So, and as well the performance with that. So we'll talk about this a bit more, but let's move a bit further to the other options here. So we have network analysis. So Adam, you mentioned SolarWinds already. So about network analysis, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's obviously very important to understand that most applications aren't, a single thing running on a single service, a single server, that especially in the enterprise context, right? So how those different parts of your application communicate with each other are often as important as how the application's actually running on that box. If you've got a cluster of web servers and they're really performant, everything's great, your front end is amazing, it couldn't be better, but all of a sudden the network drops to the app servers or the DB servers in the background, you've got real problems there. So also it's a big component part, and I mean, especially like you mentioned with COVID-19 and everyone working at home, it becomes even harder for enterprises to keep their apps performant when the network is now almost completely out of their control, right? You've got 10,000 users in your office and you know everything about how they access your applications, and then all of a sudden everyone's working at home and they've got home broadband, or they're connecting through 4G hotspots or that kind of stuff. So understanding, I guess, sort of tying together the endpoint through real user and synthetics and into the network, you get a really solid understanding of what's actually happening when someone accesses an application and what their experience is like. So yeah, it's understanding the bridge between the person and the application, and then the application components themselves. And yeah, so SolarWinds and others that take SNMP data from switches, or have other agents in place, that kind of stuff. That's where network analysis really starts to come in. You go a bit serverless, you start looking at things like Azure and AWS, Google Cloud Platform. It's maybe not quite the same, and you are thinking more about how users get to your application rather than how your application's talking to its other components, but it's always still very, very important. If no one can get to your app, right, their experience is kind of poor regardless.
Yes, that's true. So so let me pick the last point here, screen capture and session replay. I added that for completeness. So some of you might be familiar with suites like Selenium or others, where you basically do record transaction, click path, login procedure, and basically replay that. So it's also kind of a common technology into like in some areas similar to real user monitoring, just like an automated flow, which can be used. So there's service trace and other products that are in place for that, so that can do things like that as well. So basically just what add to this for completeness. So we basically covered now the different approaches that you can take. So if you can think of any others, feel free to use our chat. I think, Adam, we didn't mention there's like a Q&A, or did we?
We didn't actually. No, you're right. I think we were so excited to talk about DEM that we just jumped straight past that. But yeah, like Christian says, do feel free to post any questions in the chat. We'll try and get them at the end of the session. If we can't, we'll reply to you sort of separately by email.
Yes, exactly. So please do so. So let's go on and move to something we haven't talked much about, is Microsoft 365. So still have the old logo, the Office 365 on here, sorry, but we'll just like in point of putting everything up to rebrand, like after the rebrand of Office 365 to Microsoft 365, just like have the same logo and name everywhere. So the idea is, how do you have an approach like to monitor Office 365? So we learned a couple of things around like digital experience monitoring and the technologies there are. So we have devices and we have an infrastructure, we have a network. So what's the approach to take to monitor this fundamental business service here? So first thing is, we can't go to the data center and look if the systems are running. We don't have access to the Exchange logs. We don't know how the Teams infrastructure that runs in the backend works now. We don't have any visibility really into that at this point. If you're not called Microsoft and can walk into the data center, which is often not the case. So we don't really have a handle on anything that's behind that service we're subscribing to. So it is basically then left more on our part. And there's a valid question like, do I need to monitor a service at all? I purchased the service, right? And I paid money for an agreement with a service person, certain service level, like with an uptime and the performance. And why should I care really? So, and we have this question typically in our customer calls, and it's like, why should I care actually? And the point is here, in most cases, it's not if the service works or not, it's more, is the service working for you and for your customers? And that's a part Microsoft cannot tell you. And there will be no alert if on your network there's a switch down, if on your network there's an outage in your ADFS hybrid infrastructure. There will be no alert if you haven't this in place. And you can then go to the statusoffice.com and check if the service is running. And well, most of the time it's green, right? But you still might have a problem. So that might be where you actually have the problem on your side, and you better go out and see in your network if your network provider is fine or not. On the other hand, it might happen that you log into the status.office.com and it's red. So you might get really like, nervous about that. But actually, none of your users has a problem that, and like you're wondering, why did I get that alert in the middle of night telling me my service is affected, but everything works? This is where it comes into play, where we talk about synthetic transaction probing and testing your users and user experience. And that's when we find out if there's a problem on the network, if there's a problem on the end user part, or actually on your premise components, like if you have a mail gateway. Many of our customers actually do have still an Exchange server with a routed mail router on there to route the mail through their own premises, so to say. And if that is down, obviously there's everything green on office.com, status.office.com. People can actually send emails, but they don't eventually leave the company network because the gateway has a problem. So, and at that point, it's key to come in and do mail flow checks to really have the whole picture in mind. And Microsoft 365 offers a couple of APIs to look at the status, to check the status of Microsoft 365. But you have to always be a bit careful with that, and I'll talk about this in a moment, is when there is an alert on status.office.com, it is the time when Microsoft decide to put the alert up there. And it doesn't tell you if you have a problem or if Microsoft has a problem. And I will talk now about an important use case or like a case that happened last month, like a few days back, like actually it was last week. So there was an outage on the Microsoft 365 suite in the United States. It was on the 28th of September. So for those who are on the call here, if you like to want to do a quick show of hands, please, just to check if you're listening, right? So quick show of hands, who was affected by that? So that we would value this to see, like there's a show of hands in your attendee window, and you can just like raise your hands if you have seen this. I see hands going up right now. So yes, cool. So we've got a couple of them who actually saw this. Cool.
Yep, quite a few hands going up.
Quite a few, right? Yes. So this was actually like a major impact. You see, can't access Microsoft's 365 services. So and I went actually out to our tenants and checked like, well, Adam, were you affected by that actually?
Well, no, actually, I'm definitely one person who hasn't got their hand up at the moment. I didn't even know about this.
So why could that be that some are affected and some not?
Well, I mean, it's a massive global platform, right? It's regional. There are, tenants all over the world doing different things. So yeah, maybe
Exactly.
regional issue, right?
Exactly. Exactly, regional issue. So that was primarily in the North American data centers. So, but in many parts of the world, actually, this showed up, although they were not affected. So, and what I want to show is also here, like obviously there were all the Twitter feeds, and you see they got a lot of retweets on that here. So I was like really raised some severity. But the question is really, are my users affected? Because if you're a global admin or you're an office administrator, you're responsible to deliver those service, you want to know if you are affected. And this is difficult to tell. And that's why we actually with the, and I'll turn a bit to these to the add-ons we have. So there are two things to monitor. So on the left side, we have the Microsoft service status. This is that, and I picked like the Teams service, like all of the servers were affected, but I took Teams now. And when does it happen? Like the alert came in and it alerted that there was a problem. So and that is basically the alert that comes from the service status. And then we have the synthetic test, and I took this at the same time. So, and we see actually that the age from the synthetic data is earlier than from the service data. So you might wonder what happened in this 1 hour and something between like the synthetic alert and the service alert. That's actually when Microsoft like went in and see what's the problem before they put actually up the service alert. So with the synthetic alert, you basically get the way earlier alert on the problem than when you wait for either like down detector going red, or if users call you or Twitter feeds come in or something like that. This is the synthetic monitor that actually gives you the alert right away. So this is really the advantage of using the synthetic monitoring, to be really on top of the problem right away from the beginning. There was nothing you can do about that except like complain to Microsoft. But I'll show you later in the demo where that also makes sense when we come to the topic of service level reporting, like reporting your service level. To actually that you can understand, I purchased a service level from Microsoft, a service with 99.9 something % of availability, and then you go in and do a report. You can do a report on the service status that Microsoft presents to you, or you can actually do the real SLA report based on what you measure. So, and I'll show you later in the demo how to compare that. But as this outage was a week ago or two, so we captured some data in the SQL actually console. So and we have a few tiles. So and you can actually see that the service or many services were affected, and how that actually represented in this web app console. So first we have, for example, here the Exchange mailbox logon check. So it was around that time when the mailbox logon wasn't working again. So and then came up, it dropped again, and then after that the mailbox logon works. So this is the typical check. Everybody goes in and checks their email that would fail. And then at the same time, we also see here that the Exchange Web Service response, where we probe if the web services responds fine in milliseconds, basically times out. Also mail was not able to be sent, so the mail flow, typically there's 300 is 5 minutes. If a mail isn't sent within 5 minutes, then it times out, and it's kind of gives an alert. So the mail basically wasn't delivered, the mail flow also alerted. And we have SharePoint also was affected, OneDrive as well. So we see during that time all the spikes going up. Sometimes it takes a while, sometimes it just doesn't come back at all. So and this is where we measure exactly from the end user perspective, like how it behaves, and we have reported that outage here. All right, so let me go on a bit over and do some live demo stuff now. So what do you think, Adam? Should we show something?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you've got Squared Up in dark mode for this as well.
Yeah. Let's see. Just have to play the right sounds, I think. So cool. Right. Do you see Squared Up here?
Yeah, we've got it.
So let me see. What is actually? Let me see if I've got 4.8. Is that the latest version I've got here?
Yeah, 4.8.1 has just been published, but yeah, pretty close.
Okay. I'll just probably update very soon this one. So, all right. So, so first, obviously, like all the dashboards you're going to see, we built them here, and there is a set of community dashboards on SquareUp, and maybe Adam, you can just say some words around the community dashboards and how you get them.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
So I'll keep it focused on NICE. You guys produce, you have management packs for everything, right? So there's nothing you guys can't monitor with
Not
SCOM.
everything, but quite
pretty close. But, accompanying them, and just to really help you get value in SquaredUp, are community dashboards. So yeah, the dashboards you're seeing here have been built by the team at NICE. We'll be able to bundle those up into a pack that you can import directly into SquaredUp. So for this management pack or any other sort of vendor MPs, dashboards.squareup.com is our sort of online repository. Pre-built sets of dashboards, and also, as Christian will show when he drills into any of these, there are you get more detail through perspectives as you drill down. So yeah, it's a nice way to sort of get started really quickly when you've got a shiny new management pack monitoring stuff for you. You can get some dashboards pre-built by the vendors or by the community to sit on top of them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's one for Microsoft 365 accompanying, basically, or goes with the management pack from us that collects this data, so to say, and brings it into SCOM. And we actually updated this one, and I think it's fair to say that, well, I sent them to Adam already, and now it's on Adam's part, right?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I hope he's good with us that you get this published, correct?
Yeah, we'll have those available in the next couple of days.
Right, so cool. So basically, they will be also then available for you. So like everything you see is basically pre-built. It's there, and you see a slight change from the previous one. So in the last month or this year, we've seen many customers onboarding the NICE management pack for Microsoft 365 that are actually service providers, or that are running a number of tenants, like not just one tenant, but multiple tenants. So, and in this case, we just say, well, we can also show multiple tenants. Eventually, many of you just have one production tenant and maybe a test tenant, or just keep one tenant. So you would basically just have one red box, or green box, hopefully here. So one green box that says this. But in case you would have more tenants, it would look quite like this. So in this case, we have 5 tenants. And if you wonder about our really strange names for the tenants, I'm sure, Adam, you also wondered a bit what those mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they're simulated tenants. So, and this is a partially a demo environment here we're using. So, and obviously to have 5 production tenant, it takes a lot of work to set them up, especially if they're hybrid. So we actually, in the latest release, I'm talking a bit about later of the management pack for Active 365, we have a simulation facility in there, so we can actually use that to create more tenants than there are actually. So this one is a real tenant, so Lab 70. This is the real tenant, if you like, which is set up. The others are just basically producing data for demo and shows. So, but and this is a mixture here. So, and let me drill in a bit. So we see a couple of alerts here, but let's go in and then see. So if you go into the tenant, so that would be, if you have just one tenant, this might be your most important dashboard you want to look at, because you have your different services like Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Exchange, and you have have a overview of the end user experience. Like there's a couple of users, these are the test users here in this case, CTUA. This is a test user we set up, and this is the same test user used for all different services. You might change that. You might have more test users. This is up to you. And then we have a couple of, we call them location where we test from. So if you have one data center, one internet breakout, everybody coming from the same location, then you probably just have one of those. But imagine a company, or you have different locations, like branch offices, like a bank has different offices and they come from different locations, like New York and San Francisco. And then you have a data center where also a test needs to be run from. So you can actually split this up and test from different locations, like similar as your users, test coming from different locations. or internet breakouts essentially, and to test that. And in this case, we have a tenant that is here in West Europe. So, and we have one location in Ohio, and we have a local host is the central station where the test runs from, which is very close to the West Europe. So it's also here in Germany in a data center. So that has the lowest the fastest login time, so to say, the lowest latency. It logs in really fast. While for the login, we simulate from Ohio. We have to basically go once across the pond to log on there, and Tokyo is even further away, so we actually see also that. So we basically logging in from different locations with the same user to that. So the same applies to OneDrive, and with Teams, we actually have a test, a chat functionality that works based on bots and has a channel and a team where it actually keeps chatting to each other. So we measure that as well. So it gives you like an idea how that where it looks over time. We can easily, and I really like that, Adam, like just put everything to 24 hours, 7 days, really cool. Then I can go drill in from the different perspectives here. So. Right, if you go further in there, let's look at the Exchange server now. So we get to the Exchange server here, and they get perspective for the Exchange Online. So obviously we've got a lot of more data in each of the services, and I probably won't go through all of them, but I want to just like pick some of them. So so again, the mailbox logon we had already. So we have a check as well. So that one was the one I showed earlier during the outage in the United States. So in the tenants that were on North America tenants, like where that's basically dropped to 0, 10 means everything fine, 0 is like nothing works, and there are some states in between. So, and we also do that from different locations. Let's assume like in Japan, the network falls off, and this is really from Tokyo. We have what we basically an instance of a proxy there where we run this test across Tokyo. So if that goes offline, then we would actually see that this drops down. So so this is the actual logon, and we have the mail flow latency. So we just measure that centrally, so to say, to see the mail flow working. Or we have an informational one for the number of mailboxes here. We do the free busy check duration. So how long does it take to do a free busy check, and a couple of others. So if you go back up to the services, let me just pick also the SharePoint part. So and for SharePoint, we have a key thing which is up and downloading files, and we have a couple of others like health score and IIS latencies, and that's where also we added in the latest release, like the 320 release, and I'll talk a bit more about this in a moment. So we added some more performance metrics around this, or graphs. So and one request was like, well, I actually want to understand like how big are my SharePoint sites, like, and can you discover all the sites? So it's always like, if let me just go back. So here we have the download location for one site. So we just have like one site we monitor. You could obviously add more sites, but like at one point this gets like just too much, like to upload and download and do all the tests for all the sites. So, but you still want to know more statistic and details about your SharePoint environment. So like, which is my largest site, and how is my site growing over time? So this is where we actually added some new metrics on that here, and I'll just pick one. So this the SharePoint site, like this one here. So currently this is they're really small, so they're just all having 0, but in this demo environment. But let me actually check one of the other environments here. Let me go on to see if we have this data available here. This might not be in a simulated case available here. No, we don't have this as simulated case. So, but basically that was added in the last release, where you can actually also now could create an observant perspective, an overview of your different sites. Like, please tell me my top 10 sites, which are largest sites, so to say. All right. So
I was just going to say, Christian, there's probably a useful case sort of beyond the end user experience monitoring, just in terms of governance, right? Where are your documents being stored? Where are the, where are the company's assets, that kind of thing. So I think being able to very quickly see that alongside all of your experience data is pretty cool.
Exactly. Actually, you're right. Actually, that doesn't belong even here to talk about, right? it's yeah, it's true. You're correct, but still, it's more like the analytic data that comes in there. And here we have also added a number of sites. We have 39 sites on this here, right? So it gives you the number of sites and how it develops. But in the end, it's we don't probe all the sites. And because you could just set up, but we've put some limitations in there because obviously it takes time to up and download all the files. We heavily use the Graph API here on the background and other APIs that we get this data from. But yeah, while the other data for like site usage, and we get actually from reports. So we run reports in the background and request the data and bring this data back. So that's where we kind of add more information. Cool. Right, talking a bit about more on reports actually. So, and I'm sorry now, I actually have to open the SCOM console for reports.
Eventually.
So, yeah, so actually now I'll pre-run those here. So, and I just want to use if you're using System Center Operations Manager, you're familiar with that. So you could also use Power BI. The data is there. It's in either in the databases. So the monitoring product, the data you have seen is collected either with Azure Monitor and stored in Log Analytics. So also we had nice released a product that can work entirely without SCOM. So it just like places data in Log Analytics, and you can take a data from there and use it in Power BI and other places. If you use a System Center, you have the reporting, and you basically can use this. I ran this report here over the last month. So basically think, Adam, if you're my manager and I have to send you a report like once a month on the service levels that Microsoft delivered for us, and I send you this report, what would you say?
Well, if I'm expecting 99.99%, they're not doing a good enough job.
Exactly, and then it's like not really cool, really. Like, and then we can actually go in and see what actually happened. So we have this tracker in here. So let's have a look what happened, and then you actually see, well, on the 23rd, on 25th, oh, ouch, and the 28th, like they're really like only 95%. So in the can go in there, and then we actually see that was exactly the time during the outage, the 28th. We reported that and make this visible in the report. And this data is non-compromisable. This is in the data warehouse, and it's taken from the reports, and this is the Microsoft database. So we have a couple of customers who are required to do reports, and they actually need this. And yeah, well, if there's an argument about service level with Microsoft, you can take this report here forward. You can export it as PDF or Excel and do some further math on that, but it gives you a good overview of your service levels actually.
And you mentioned at the start being able to sort of do a similar thing, but for the service status from Microsoft versus your own synthetic.
Oh yeah, that's a good point actually. Yes, so this is a point. There's also a report which can report on the service levels from the status board, and maybe it would be interesting to just go on there. So let me just jump over to the other system back again. So I've opened the yeah. Well, this is the status.office.com, and if you go in here, and that's the same lab I mentioned before. So I go just to service health here, and actually we see, whoa, there's a problem. And Microsoft reports a problem for this tenant, although I don't have a real problem. So everything works here, and mail is being delivered. So the critical service degradation they put in here, it says currently, well, E5 license can't be provisioned, and they get a non-delivery of sending and receiving emails. Well, that's really not good, but it's only affecting some of our customers or some of our end users. So we don't really want to have a big alert going on there because most of the things work. So, but you can also make this visible in here, right in here. So, but currently I think this is disabled, but we can look at that. So we would just go for Exchange Online and look for Exchange. Well, pick the Exchange tenant here, and going to the monitoring entities, and we have the service health status. And this is exactly the service health that we get from the Microsoft 365 communication APIs, which is represented here. But currently it's disabled. So because, well, we want to leave this more to customers to decide if they'd like to have it or not. So you can just go in here and enable it via an override. So, and once you enable this, you would also receive that type of information in the alert view, so to say. Yeah.
So by default, you trust what SCOM's telling you rather than the Microsoft notification.
Yeah, exactly. So because we've seen, like, if you turn this on, right, it gets pretty red quite quickly. So and if and the service level, well, we have the service level that report on this object, so to say. We have SLA tracking for the status, for the service status that Microsoft reports, and we have one from the synthetic, so to say. And then this one is frequently red because it's not a true issue. Yeah. So, but in the end, yes, we trust more what we do with the synthetics than what Microsoft reports. That's correct.
Nice.
Yeah. So, because if you go in here, you frequently see issues. Also, you go to, there's this funny thing. If you go to history, you'll see it's getting quite red, and you see, like, even yesterday, every day they have some problem somewhere here. So, and but your tenant might not be affected, right? It's you might be perfectly fine. You just see that problem coming up here.
That's ultimately always the problem that I personally find. You know, somebody reports an issue with Outlook, or they can't get into some component of Microsoft 365. So the first thing you do as an admin, if you're not being able to monitor this yourself, is you check here, right? And there's always a really obscure message about a problem that you know, it sounds kind of similar. It sounds like it might be the case, but you know, it's only on real close inspection you find out actually it's only affecting mailboxes from, you know, the Ohio data centers, or, you know, that kind of stuff. It's yeah, sometimes this is a bit too general, and it often takes more time than it's worth. And you're right, like the delay in actually these notifications appearing, you often end up finding out from your user base that there's a problem before Microsoft tell you anything. I mean, that's ultimately the problem with all monitoring, though, right? Isn't it? Someone's always very quick to tell you that something's broken.
That's true. That's true. Exactly. So best have somebody else sitting in all places and testing everything manually.
Exactly. A synthetic person to tell you first. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So let's go back to the slides, and I have some news here actually. So I want to share with you. So there's a new release. So similar as like SquareUp, you're doing tons of releases. We also do some releases. So this is another one this year. So we released 3.0, 3.10, and 3.20 now of the Active 365 management pack that does all this great stuff of synthetic monitoring of reports that we retrieve using all the graph APIs and the communication APIs to get most of the information from Microsoft that they provide in terms of what's working, what's not. And we do these tests. So I showed you the SharePoint Online storage space monitoring. So the storage monitoring we added for that. I forgot to show the license reporting and monitoring. Yes, we also do have that now available. So you can actually understand like what licenses you have and what type of license are expiring. Let's see, you purchased like 50 E5 licenses, and you basically have only like 2 left, and you want to eventually go out and add some others, so you can get an alert. You can also use the historic, like how your number of licensing is growing for different types and so on. So that's also added. The other parts here are more like under the hood, if you like. So because, and this is a big challenge if you monitor a service, it's like the service and the interface is constantly changing. Like there are new functions released like based every week from Microsoft, and there's no version of the APIs. They will just like push it out and just make it available. And so we constantly like need to update the product to actually use these new functions here. And this is also the case where we do not require admin consent permissions for Teams monitoring. Yes, many were like, for some customers it was really a breaker of using the product because they had to go to their admin say, well, I need admin permission to monitor. It's like, no way, you can use admin permission on Teams. But the problem was before, Teams was new, there was no like permission set, like API permission set that could just grant like a read or monitoring permission. So they added this in the last months. So we like use this new permissions now in this management pack or the collector as well now. well, we dropped the basic authentication entirely. Like that was a year ago. If you would have talked, it was like the thing you had to use. But now everything within a year kind of became obsolete. Now it's not supported by Microsoft anymore. So we dropped also support for that. If you still require that, you still can use some of the older versions of the management pack, and it works still with that, but it will go away in most areas. There's some exceptions for if you're using a hybrid Exchange deployment with Exchange on-prem, but we still keep supporting that. Anti-throttling, I'm not sure if you should go into the Adam. What do you think is anti-throttling? Like, should I talk about that?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, good. So anti-throttling is like if you heavily use the APIs from Microsoft, like sending emails, logging into SharePoints, uploading files to do all these great tests to see if it works. Microsoft actually thinks, well, what is this endpoint doing so many tests and checks? It's probably something, eventually some gone rogue thing or mail client that does that. So they don't block typically, they never do that. We haven't really seen that, but they just say, well, slow down, please. Don't do this like upload like 10 files every 5 seconds to our SharePoints or something like that. So and then it basically throttles the whole thing, which corrupts like our statistics. So, but there's a way, like when you're throttled, you get a notification back from the API say, well, wait, you throttled, so please try again, so to say. And we've put a couple of measures into place to actually read these messages and disregard the previous measurement and reissue this. Plus, we also have a new concept in place to actually do not use a central collector, but we can use satellite collectors. This is something I'm not talking about today, and this will come more like in the next month and what we're working on. But we still have, in some cases, challenges if you are custom at like, let's say 60 tenants and 50,000 SharePoints, we'll still eventually run into that. But there's a scale out mechanism we have put into place, and this is coming with one of the next versions in more detail. Then we have Microsoft, the license monitoring. Let's say you're running out of licenses and so things. And well, cool is there's a seamless upgrade. So if you're using 3.10 or previous versions, you can just go up and just import. And yet the last thing, yeah, there are updated community dashboards, and I'm just relying on Adam that is
coming soon.
Cool, great. So the other thing that's available. So if you go to nice.de and go to the download section, you'll actually find that. All right. Last but not least, we have a little announcement here. So we have a little promo going. So a promotion. So really for this, if you go into your company and say, well, we need to have this Microsoft 365 really in-depth monitoring, and we have eventually SolarWinds, you might have any of the other products also Adam talked about, like New Relic or a Service Trace, and all those that can feed data into Squared Up. So you can use a lot of these different tools and bring them together in one place. And you also decide to use the add-on from us, from NICE here to the synthetic part of that, we'll have a special offer here for that. And Adam, maybe you just can tell us how that works.
I mean, I could talk for hours about the benefits of having Squared Up with SCOM and also with Azure Monitor as well. We are about to run out of time, so I'll save the audience from that. But certainly for now, the offer that you're seeing on screen, it's a one-time offer. This won't be in the recording that we'll share of this webinar. It's just for the sort of live participants. But yeah, if you head to that bit.ly link at the bottom, you can buy Squared Up along with the NICE management pack and get 20% off the first year subscription. Fully supported, excellent support teams on both sides will make sure that you're looked after. And it's super important right now. Everything we've talked about is even more important this year with so many people sort of working remote. It is a real challenge to know that all your users are sort of happy and that they have access to all the tools they need. So if you're not already using Squared Up, if you're not already using the NICE management pack, head over to that link and get in touch with us, and we'll help you get set up.
Great. So yeah, perfect. So I think that's it about. So, and I think we can just go over to Q&A. So, and let's talk a bit about this. So I see there are some questions actually.
Yeah, there's a couple come in. there was one sort of answered in the chat, but it's worth just asking, I guess, for comment. We talked about this topic quite a bit at the SCOM-a-thon event back in June. A couple of
maybe you just read
people...
out the question, because I think not everybody's seeing the question and the answers.
No, I will do. Yeah, a couple of people at SCOM-a-thon presented on using SCOM as an APM tool, and there was a question asked sort of early on in the webinar. Whether SCOM APM is still a suitable product versus some of these like cloud tools like Pingdom, etc. Do you have any personal comments or any opinion on that, Christian?
Well, as you wrote, there are pros and cons for both, but you see the APM part of SCOM is not seen much, to be honest. But especially the session, and I think we should point that to the recording from SCOM-a-thon, was really
Absolutely
great. And the big company, right, putting that to the use case, like terrific, right? But
yeah. So like Christian was just saying, scomathon.com, you can sign up to get access to all the recordings from the day, and there's another event later this year. But yeah, a couple of people from Polypore presented on how they use SCOM's APM functionality to completely monitor all of their internal applications. So I guess it's, there are pros and cons. Obviously, if you have a enterprise app on-prem, it's not web-facing, then using a SaaS tool to monitor that can present difficulties unless it has on-prem agents, that kind of thing. But if you already have SCOM, you're right, you already have a lot of the functionality. So pros and cons for both, probably down to your use case, but both perfectly valid choices. There was another question specifically about your how your management pack works.
Yeah, so there's one about the monitoring from the satellite location is made using a proxy. Yeah, right. That's correct. So how to know is the huge latency coming from network or the connection from proxy to MS service? Yeah, that's a very good question. So, and we had a lot of discussions here at NICE and our developer teams, and making some graph and calculations well, there's a way to calculate it, because through the proxy, we actually know how long it takes to the proxy, and from there then to the service. But still, it is, well, your mileage might vary, as you say, right? So, and it is a bit of a challenge. So, and for this reason, we actually, with the 320 release, it is technically possible to place actually the collector at a satellite location. So, this is something we are working out in a white paper right now, but we have noticed that, and we've not in all cases be able to kind of isolate the part from the collector, which is central now, to the proxy, if you like. So we actually go the other way around and place the actual active collector at the remote location. So this is basically the answer to that. So and you can, if you're interested in more to know about that, so just send us an email, or there will be also some content up to follow that. So, and there's some colleagues from me, I think, on this call as well, who are very excited to see that question. So stay tuned for more details.
Right.
And there's one more, I think, another one.
Yeah, the final question, how does multi-tenant work for a CSP? So I guess it's probably worth just a couple of sentences on how you're actually making these synthetic transactions, right? There's going to be mailboxes, or there's going to be service principals in Azure, that kind of thing. So I guess for a multi-tenant environment, you're starting to look into things like Azure Lighthouse, or getting credentials across different tenants.
So first, what's important is to know that the CSP owns everything. So like the stations, the collecting, the service principal setups, all of that is owned by the CSP. And the CSP can define how they want to set us up. So they can either use things like Lighthouse, as you mentioned, or they could just go across and set it up in the different tenants and bring it all together. So in one monitoring environment, and this can be either SCOM, or it could also be on Azure Monitor. So you could have like a CSP instance, if you like, or like a tenant where you actually it's a subscription in the end. So you have like a subscription, and they have a resource in there where you store all the data in there, for example. Or you have this in SCOM, in the SCOM data warehouse, where you bring the data from all the tenants in there, and then you actually have the view as we have seen it, like on your dashboard, where you see all the different tenants. So we have a special CSP pricing. So if you're interested, just send us an email or follow up. So we have also, as we have more and more CSPs are like that have multiple tenants. We have a arrangement for that to make it really attractive. And some of the CSPs really see this as a value add to sell social to the customers. And Adam, I could talk for hours about this as well, because we just came like 2 weeks ago. I visited actually CSP to bring that into their environment. So, but I think we are running out of time, Adam, I fear.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Well, luckily there aren't any more questions, so we've sort of covered them all off. If anyone does have any questions following this, Christian, what's the best way for somebody to contact NICE if they need to?
Yeah, just go to the URL www.nice.de. So and just submit the questions there, or here also telephone numbers or email addresses. So you can call us up on the US number, or you can send us an email, or just use the submit contact form, or yeah, you can send us a letter as well, right? The address is also
perfect. Yeah, same deal for us. You can reach out to SquaredUp using hello@squaredup.com, or if you need any help, if you go to SquaredUp, you can request a free trial so straight away. Support@squaredup.com is available to you from the moment you're installed. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and for those of you who've stuck on for a whole hour. And thanks of course to Christian as well for the excellent presentation and all the learning today. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Christian, or
no,
should we
thank
say
you.
goodbye?
Thank you for setting
Cool.
this up. And great. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thanks
Have a
everyone.
good day.
Bye-bye.